All right, so attempt number 2. Apparently my mic was off. All right, so today's PowerPoint kind of has some big concepts, and I just would feel better if we talked about it just a little bit. So you have a whole PowerPoint, and I put the reflections as slide 2 and slide 3. So you need to make sure that you are able to answer these 4 questions, okay? And I am going to make this video just for us to kind of talk about the really big points, and then I am expecting you to kind of watch the video, then go back and look at the PowerPoint and answer these 4 questions, okay? At the end of the PowerPoint, there are some vocabulary. These are words that you just need to learn to be a good world geography student. We are definitely going to be touching on these terms over and over and over again throughout the year. But these 4 questions at the beginning are the ones that are going to relate to what is going to be on the test for Friday. This entire PowerPoint is not for a grade. Again, this is going to be notes for that test on Friday. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So our first question is, what landforms do the first civilizations settled near? Which ones are going to be important? Yesterday we talked about the 4 basic needs of people, and we kind of had our brain juices going, and just about on every slide we talked about this one specific landform. And keep in mind that when we say landforms, we are talking about mountains, rivers, valleys, islands, volcanoes, like all of those stuff kind of fall under landforms. What is the greatest achievement from the Sumer civilization? So we're talking about the Sumer civilization, and you just kind of need to pick one of the achievements that you think is the most important. What is a cultural hearth? Where was the first one? Many argue that we wouldn't have the life we live today if it wasn't for the agricultural revolution. Explain why someone would believe this. So you need to find out what cultural hearth means. You need to find out what agricultural revolution means. And then you need to connect agricultural revolution to today, look around today's society and kind of talk about where the connection is. So here are some vocabulary that you are going to encounter during our PowerPoint. Here is our first kind of thinking questions. If you were in class, this would be like your warm-up to kind of get your brain juices going. What happens when people begin staying in one place? On what physical feature are most cities located on? Think about yesterday's PowerPoint. What was that physical feature that we just kind of talked about a lot on almost every single slide? Next, to what landform would you start a city if you had the means to build one? So if you are going to create your own village, where would you want your village to be located? Once upon a time, our early ancestors were all hunters and gatherers. In my brain, I think of that movie, The Croods, and how they are hunters and gatherers, and how they are trying to, find eggs and different things in order to eat. And they live in the cave. That's kind of, whenever I talk about hunters and gatherers, that's what kind of goes through my mind. Then a few figured out you could plant and grow food instead of looking around for it. So there's this really big theory out there that talks about how a select few of men are going to be the ones who are going forth and doing all of the hunting for the big game, for the big animals, in order to, have a meat source. So that left mostly women at home with the kiddos, and that women were the first farmers, because as the men are off getting the meat, the women are, noticing, oh, hey, that bush has these berries. Those berries, don't kill me when I eat them, and they taste good. So there's this argument that talks about how women are one of the first farmers. That was pretty cool. We don't hear too much about women way in the ancient civilizations. This was the beginning of the agricultural revolution. It changed everything about the way people interacted with the environment, made modern cultures possible. So what happens when people stop moving around and stay put in one place? Civilizations are created. Agricultural revolution, agriculture means farming, and then revolution means like a complete change in what was going on. So when we're talking about this, we are talking about how we are going to go from hunters and gatherers, then all of a sudden we're going to completely change, and now we're going to start farming, okay? Think of the first person who looked at a cow and said, yeah, I'm going to go drink its milk. Like, That would have been so nasty if someone would have told me, yeah, they're going to go and, take some milk out of a cow. I would have been disgusted by it. So, this is like a complete change of what's happening before. Primary activities. So all of these jobs are examples of primary activities. When you are talking a primary activity, these are direct interaction with the environment. So we're talking about hunting, farming, fishing, mining. All of these things, I am going to live off of the environment. If I'm going to go fishing and I'm going to eat the fish, I'm going to go, it's so weird. They're like hiding in wolf skins or something. And they're going to go and kill the buffalo and they're going to, eat it. Excuse me. They are directly working on the land. Most of us people, we aren't directly going and interacting with the environment. The only interaction that most of us get is, walking from the front door into the car to get to school, probably. Maybe football players and athletes spend a little bit more time outside, but for the most part, we don't. Sumer is going to be one of the earliest civilizations. It is going to kind of start off, there's it's like this whole area. We see Sumer, there's Ur, there's Uruk. Those are going to be the three oldest cities of all time. And this area between the two rivers, between the Euphrates and the Tigris, this is going to be called Mesopotamia. Everyone say Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is going to be this land that we are going to start to see some of the first earliest civilization. I need to correct myself. Sumer is this color. So all of this area is Sumer. Sumer is made up of city-states, Ur, Uruk, Nippur, and Kish, and Lagash. So all of this area is Sumer. It's like a region, okay? And they're going to have very similar cultures, although there's going to be like a king for each of these cities. They haven't united into one country. And so all of these people, sharing the same culture, they're going to invent a calendar, a system of riding a plow. Guys, a plow to help you farm brings us from, having just a regular stick in the earth into having like actual things. So it's going to be a really big deal. Potter's wheel, wheeled carts, and sailboats. Think of how you got to school. You needed 4 wheels to get you there. So the wheels is like mind-blowing. It's super important. The cultural hearth is a place where civilization began. This is just kind of like when we're talking about hearths back in the old time, it talks about like fireplaces and how, that's where most of the family would gather at night. On top of that, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to be making it in your fireplace. That's going to kind of be like the place that everyone kind of gravitates toward. For me, my family's Mexican, and my Mexican grandma is always in the kitchen. She's always making some type of food. So that's usually the place that, like, when we go over, we usually, end up in the kitchen with my grandparent. And that's kind of like our hearth. So kind of think about what place does your entire family kind of come together? What hearth would kind of be the best evidence of that? All right. And for most of human history, the hearth is the place around the fireplace. We just talked about that. And the first cultural hearth began in Africa. Guys, Egypt has been around since forever, okay? Those pharaohs and their civilization, they have such a very rich and long history. So you can watch this video. You're kind of expected to, but we're going to continue on. The Fertile Crescent. So this entire area, keep in mind, this Mesopotamian over here area, Mesopotamia means land between 2 rivers. So between the Euphrates and the Tigris, there's going to be super fertile land because those rivers is keeping everything fertile. The Nile River up here in Egypt, it like floods once a year and everything becomes very fertile again. And then the river gets small. And then next season it floods again. So this area is called the Fertile Crescent because the land is just so incredibly fertile. It's just with those 2 rivers. So now we see like these really big civilizations. Egypt, that is going to be back from 2000 BC, they start to get really big. And then we have Mesopotamia and the Sumer area. and they're going to kind of simmer and they get bigger. And so now these two really very well established civilizations are going to start kind of, interacting with each other. Here is a cultural Hearths. We talked about how Egypt is going to be one of the first ones. And then we start to see other areas that kind of pop up. We have Mesoamerica, we have over here in Peru, and two in Africa, and then that Mesopotamian area, and the Indus River Valley, another one, and then the Chinese River Valley off of the Yangtze. The first step was agricultural revolution. So agriculture means farming. Revolution means like it's completely changing everything. So people are growing their own food. They're making it possible to live in these permanent villages. Guys, we cannot have these permanent settlements unless we have a reliable food source, okay? If I didn't have a reliable food source, if I didn't have H-E-B and Kroger right next to me, I would probably, me and my kids, we're going to be like spending some time outside. We're going to be farming in our backyard and making sure that we have enough money. Now a culture could produce more food with fewer people doing the work. People began to specialize. So most of us aren't farmers, okay? We don't need to be out on the farm in order to produce the food. So that allows us to have special jobs. So I am allowed to go to school, and I majored in history. Mr. Cantu, he went to school and he was able to focus on Spanish. Miss Frederick, she was able to specialize in math. So now we have all of these different people. We all live in the same community, but now we're all able to kind of focus on certain areas, okay? My husband was able to focus on engineering. My dad was able to focus on accountancy. And I do have an uncle who is a farmer. And so he's able to, but, not all of us needs to be farmers. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Let's move on. All right. So specialization of labor. And when you start to see specializations of labor, you're going to see a divide in societies. So now we have the people who are going to kind of rule, like kings and other people, usually kings at this time. And then we have like just the everyday normal people who are going to probably be the farmers. And then from there, we're going to see a wider range. So we're going to end up having like the rich people, and then we're going to start seeing some of the poor people. Two classes that are going to start to be created is going to be a warrior class. And this is going to be like all of the soldiers that are protecting the area, and they're going to get paid really well. And then we're going to see in most societies a priest class, this like a religious class, where they are going to be in charge of spiritual well-being of the community and, whatever that may be. In some cases, they're going to insist on human sacrifices, and other cases, they're like, no, you're good. Just be a good person. So I like talking about those. It's really cool. All right, here's our culture Hearths again. There you go. These Mesoamerican people over here, they were the ones that were sacrificing people. It was like some of the stories that they talk about. One of them in particular is they found a vase, like how over here in Egypt where they had like the organs in it. Well, here in Mesoamerica, they had a vase, and inside they did x-ray scans within like the past 20 years, and they found a newborn baby who like the skull wasn't even like intact yet. So basically what had happened was that this baby was born, and within like 3 seconds was shoved into this vase and sealed, and it was given as a sacrifice because they believed that they had to do that in order to like better their community and make sure that the god would send rain. And it's awful to hear it and think about it, but I mean, some of these cultures are so interesting to study. All right, so Columbian exchange. This is talking about cultural diffusion. So it's the idea that one culture is going to kind of send food, clothes, language, religion, parts of their culture to another area. So kind of think about a fart my dog, his fart really, really stinks. And it's really funny because sometimes like I'll smell it first and then I kind of wait for like everyone else to smell it. And then it's like, oh, it's so gross. And so that's diffusion, where it starts at one spot and then it just kind of spreads. So the same thing's happening, like bananas, that's from Europe and it's coming into Americas. I don't really know why we're talking about the Columbian Exchange. It's not on your test. It's okay. So we're just going to move on. All right. Some other things just to kind of get your juices going is innovations, means like those achievements, ways of doing things. So when we talked about Sumer and we talked about the calendars and we talked about the wheels, those would be considered innovations. And then the fact that here in, we use wheels on our cars. Now, that was cultural diffusion, where that idea came from Sumer. It also, I think China eventually like makes their own wheels. And so those things are going to kind of exist. And then as they are exposed to different cultures, that idea is going to spread. So that's cultural diffusion. Agricultural revolution happened about 10,000 years ago. What's really cool is how we talked about all of these different hearths, and agriculture revolution occurs separately in all of these different areas. So I just think that's so fascinating, where people in China by themselves, not really talking to other civilizations, and they come up with this idea like, hey, agriculture, let's go drink the milk from the cow. But then like the people over here in Peru, they had the same idea. They're like, wow, agriculture, let's go drink some milk from a llama, because that's the only domestic animal they have in the Americas is the llamas. And if you've ever been near a llama, llamas are mean and they're grumpy and they will spit at you. And so they're poor guys over here. So like all of these, like agricultural revolution is what's happening, where we are going from being hunters and gatherers to us being farmers. Cultural hearth, we've already talked about. Here is a long list of different things. I don't think cultural convergence was talked about. You don't need to know it for the test, but that just kind of means where two cultures are kind of coming together and then they're going to blend and like they're converging, just like when we talked about converging boundaries, we kind of see cultures converging. All right, so there's everything in a nutshell. You should be able to just answer the first 4 questions is what you really need to know for that test. And then all of your answers are in the PowerPoint. So, yay. If you have any questions, you can log into Zoom once we're back at school, and you can ask questions in class. Bye, guys.